know about you, but as I've gotten older and hit certain birthday milestones, I've noticed there's this specific timeline and certain stories I start running up against. Things like how much I should have done by a certain age, what my relationship status should be, what my savings account should look like, what my title should look like. All these insidious expectations that I put on myself that had me constantly asking, have I done enough? Or even, am I enough? Based on my age. And the more that I talk to other people, especially women, the more I realize how many of us have these stories and these made up timelines that we never agreed to, but somehow impose on ourselves anyway, and they make us feel terrible about ourselves. This is why today's conversation with my dear friend Stacey Lindsay is so important. She's helped me realize that the timeline is completely made up. The measuring stick isn't real. The shoulds are manufactured, and the stories that so many of us have been carrying about our age, the chapter of life we're in, our careers, our bodies, our choices, they were all handed to us. They're not ours. Stacey is an award-winning journalist and the author of Being 40, which comes out today, May 5th. We get into the made-up timeline, the brick walls, what it actually feels like in your body when you're living someone else's script versus your own, and what happens when you finally stop trying to justify yourself to people who are never going to get it anyway. And we end somewhere I didn't see coming. With a new name for this chapter of life that I haven't been able to stop thinking about since we recorded. This is Unbehaved. Let's get into it. Ah, Stacey. Kindred soul, I swear. All right, we're gonna get right into this.
Can you hear my smile? You can see it.
Yes.
Can you hear it?
I mean, that is like who you are. It is like
I'm
you are
looking at
just,
you.
you
So
are a human smile.
good. I like that.
Okay, so we have the book coming out. I haven't gotten to read it yet, but I will as soon as it's in my hands. But one of the things that I imagine is in there is a lot about the shoulds in
Oh,
life.
yeah.
And I'm curious for you, as the process of writing the book, as this uncovering of a new perspective, what are some of the most harmful shoulds that you're seeing consistently of women at a middle age?
It's this timeline. And I think we're always up against it, whether we realize it or not. But it really became evident to me when I reached the 40s, turned 40. And I've talked about this how I didn't have some existential dread leading up to my 40th birthday. And I know some people do. And I understand that totally. What was interesting was after I turned 40, though, I started really paying attention to things feeling different. And it was the shoulds. It was all these markers that I felt they became almost like brick walls. And I kept running up against them and then hurting myself and running up against this wall and hurting myself even more. And so, again, these things that we think we should do in our career lives, our work lives, when it comes to motherhood, having and not having children, when it comes to how we look, all these things. There's a countless shoulds. But the biggest thing is this timeline, I feel like, that we need to do these things. And then we feel like we need to do these things according to this made up calendar, which is totally manufactured, but still. And so I know I'm not alone. I've heard this from so many other women, and I have experienced this. Oh my gosh, I am now a 40-year-old woman, or I'm a 45-year-old woman, or I'm a 52-year-old woman, or 28-year-old woman. Have I done enough? I still haven't done this. What does society think about me that I haven't? Fill in the blank. But it's all against this made up timeline. And I get excited because I do think the timeline is slowly disintegrating when we have these conversations, but it's still real. It's still there. So there's a collection of shoulds that are just endless, but they're all up against the when, and it can really hurt us.
When you talk about running into the brick wall, is there any specific brick wall that you ran into that was particularly painful?
I felt this desire that I didn't want to feel like I had to keep justifying my decisions. And so I think that is the brick wall also is kind of that metaphor for feeling like I have to justify. Feeling like one thing for me is I'm a woman without children, and I have actively made that choice in my life. And at the same time, it is actively caused me a lot of grief, a lot of angst, a lot of feeling like I have to prove that I'm enough without having kids. Also having to prove that this is not a very neat, easy decision too. For some women, it may be, but for me, it hasn't been. It is something that I actively really reevaluate all the time. And I have a lot of grief around, even though I have the immense privilege of being able to have made that decision, where a lot of women don't have children because it's not their choice. And so that was a big one for me, and work too, like all the questions around work. And I know you and I can dig into this for hours and hours and hours, right? But the have I done enough in my work? Have I done things in my quote unquote career? And I say quote unquote career because I think career can kind of be a little bit of a stagnant word. I think we need to stretch it out a little bit and really talk about what that means. Um, but have I done enough and enough according to, whose standards? But I'm always asking myself this. So work and kids conversation, and then also too, the partnership conversation is a huge one as well, by which I think we feel very, very judged, and we have to kind of explain why we're not in a partnership, or why we're leaving a partnership, or why we're entering a new one, or changing all these things. We don't have to explain to anyone, but we need to unlearn that. Did I answer your question too? I get so passionate about
Yes.
this and I feel like it's all
Yes.
spidery.
Don't question yourself. Don't question whether or not you answered the question. Um, okay. Of course, I'm just going to keep spiraling down this. But one thing that came up for me just listening to that is it's the source of grief. It's a source of pain, but then it is almost multiplied by the fact that we feel judged and have to justify it. Like, so
Yeah.
the process of writing this book and understanding that dynamic, has it changed the way that you respond? Or if someone asks you about one of those sticky topics of children or partnership or career, do you still feel like you have to justify it? Or do you have a new way of explaining yourself? Or do you not feel like you have to explain yourself at this point?
I'm feeling that less and less and less, I have to say. And that has been one of the gifts of writing this book. Writing this book was incredibly hard because writing a book is incredibly hard. You know this, Megan. That's another aspect of this I think we need to talk about more is just whether it's writing a book, whether it's sharing our story on a podcast, whether it's sharing our story on social media. It's hard to do that, right? If we really go there, it can be hard because we feel like we're going to get, again, a whole nother layer of judgment. But writing this book was really hard because I was really delayering, which is a word Carrie Hammer gifted me. She's somebody I interviewed for the book, and she looks at this kind of as a delayering. We're taking off these layers of stories and expectations and judgments that we've been carrying for so long. So it was hard because I was actively going through the process of delayering, and I still am. I don't think we're ever done. Like I am not a one and done. Oh, I've learned all these things and learned from me. I am still messy and actively in it, but that was hard and also incredibly freeing, and it has gifted me this new perspective of I don't feel like I need to I'm more responsive than reactive to these things. Again, of justifying, of thinking, "Oh my gosh, is something wrong with me?" And this actually touches all aspects of my life too. I think beauty is such an interesting example and kind of a lens through which we can view a lot of these things too. If we see a new wrinkle pop up on our face, instantly we might think, I need to fix that. What's wrong with me? I did something wrong. I didn't wear enough sunscreen. I didn't get the retinol cream. Whatever it is, there's nothing wrong. If you want to quote unquote fix it, that's your right. But there's no first and foremost, there's nothing wrong. And so that's what this process has helped me see is to not react and think, oh my gosh, again, these stories are right. I'm the one who's broken. It's not. These are manufactured stories, and that how I respond to it is up to me. And again, I want to say this it is not easy, but it is also probably the most worthwhile thing we can put our hearts toward for ourselves, for our the fellow women in our lives, for women we don't know, and of course for our daughters and nieces and everyone else. So it has
Yeah.
changed me.
Oh, this process of delayering, I think, what a great word, first
Good
of all.
word, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
so
it's a
good.
good visual.
But so my experience of delayering in the last, let's call it 10 years, has regularly uncovered this feeling as though I didn't choose the way that my life has turned out as freely as I had imagined. That
Yeah.
a lot of it had been shaped by external forces of judgment, expectation, all of societal pressure. And I'm curious for women as they're going through a process like this, is there any way that you were able to identify what are the first signs that you are living more through around a manufactured script that has been
Mhm.
externally imposed upon you versus your own internal truth? What is the difference between those two? And like, how can people start divorcing
Yeah.
those two concepts?
I really pay attention to how it shows up in my body. And later in the book, near the end, I worked with a somatic practitioner, this woman who does therapy through dance and actually specifically erotic dance. And it can be, but it's by yourself too. And I've learned to that is one thing that I've taken from that practice is to move my body in a way that feels good every day. And I do that to take care of myself, but I also do that to really check in to see where I physically feel like I'm holding some of this angst and stress. And again, it's every day, right? Again, like there's mortgages and there's rent and there's food to buy. There's all the things. So this is not, and of course, the world we're living in today, the stress isn't going away. So there's always going to be that stress. But I found though, when it's the stress that I carry in my body that goes against my soul, and it's just this stress again that I need to perform, I physically feel that I feel it in my upper back. I feel it in my chest. I feel this tightening, this kind of anxious, hot energy. And when I just check in, I just check in. And when I feel that, it's different from like right before you and I started talking. I got excited. I kind of felt like an excitement, butterfly, nerves too. And I don't want that to ever go away. That's a totally different feeling than when I was honestly in a meeting last week and it felt really bad and it felt really expectational. And I was feeling that. I was carrying that physically in my body. So it's a somatic practice. It really is, first and foremost for me. And I invite that to be a practice for anybody too because it's accessible. This is not very expensive wellness culture stuff. This is genuine just checking in and seeing, where you're carrying the stress. And the other thing too is I just check in what we talked about a couple minutes ago too. Okay, is this something that is I'm reacting to because I feel like I'm less than or broken or should or did something wrong? Or is this something that is maybe, a challenge or a hurdle I have to overcome, but can I kind of pause again and respond to it rather than react to it? But when I have that instant feeling like I have to react and I come up against it all the time, I know something's deeper, something's going on. That's a manufactured societal thing that I can take my time and reevaluate how I want to respond to it. And it's just this lovely hug you give yourself too. Because the other thing about these patriarchal stories and these expectations, and so much about what you write about in your book, Megan, it pulls us far away from ourselves. It makes us feel completely disconnected. And man, I guess, when it comes to patriarchy, that's really the point, right? They want us to feel destabilized, right? So that's a deeper whole nother conversation about that, but it's all related. But this practice is it's just I feel so much closer to myself too when I just take a minute and go, okay, I'm feeling this angst and stress. I'm feeling like I need to prove myself against this. And I don't have to. I don't have to.
I'm curious, either from your own personal experience or interviews that you've done, what are some of the most common and harmful ways that women typically abandon themselves in their 20s or 30s
Mm.
that they then start to reclaim after the big 40?
Yeah. Thank you for this question because it's a fun one too because I think back on my 20s and 30s and I have so much compassion for her, right? That
Right?
woman was hustling. Oh my gosh, 20s she was running around. I mean, 20s I feel she was having fun too. She was having some fun in her 30s as well, but the 20s she was just doing all the things. So why I like this question too is that it's important to underscore the hard work. Like there are these times in our lives that we do have to try a bunch of things and fail, right? And I argue that happens through all our lives. Like we have to keep if we're taking risks and are stretching ourselves. And so I talk to women in their 20s and 30s often, and I don't want them to be afraid if they're trying new things and they're failing and they're working hard. I just don't want them to again feel like there is something broken or wrong with themselves. I don't want them to outsource their self-worth, and that is the biggest thing that I see women in their 20s and 30s, and I have to say too, women in their 40s and 50s. But the nice thing about our 40s is we start to gain this incredible wisdom that is so hard to describe sometimes because it is this we get this upgrade of just genuine knowing ourselves and again delayering and all the things, but it's the self-worth component that is critical. When if I could go back to my 20s and my 30s, there's so many things that I would still do the same. I would have done, taken the hard the hard road when it comes to, oh my gosh, trying things and all that. But it was I lacked I let certain situations chip away at my self-worth and my own dignity and sometimes my values. That really gets me emotional. That is the biggest, and it's not a mistake too because again, we're all living under this really hard system, but it's something that I think happens to so many women. And if we can just take these moments to again pause and to know we are worthy of peace, we are worthy of joy, we are worthy of emotional safety too, because so much of this chips away at our emotional safety. So number one, it's the self worth, and I've been there too. But I work on that every single day, just knowing again that I'm worthy of these very, very basic things.
Mm. One thing that is common to both of us is that, yes, the experience of writing a book is hard, but it also is a forced pause and a forced examination of an issue where we get to go super deep and delayer, where our work is to actually explore things and delayer them for ourselves. But not everyone has the gift of getting to write a book about the issues that are heavy on their heart. And so I'm curious, what does the process look like for the person who is so busy and is like, cool, Stacey, you got to write an entire book on this thing. I am like doing my 9 to 5. I am going to soccer practice. I'm so busy that finding a way to cultivate and nurture my sense of self-worth feels completely out of bounds. How do they start?
Uber busy human, right? Where I love that you say that too, because we can talk about all these amazing things about this, evolving the self and finding ourselves and reclaiming our voices and declaring ourselves. And sometimes it can still be too macro for that. I picture her too. I pictured this woman when I was writing, and she was a single mom, and I felt her. I felt like she was right next to me, and, there were pieces of her that were so evident in me too, and I'm thinking that same thing, that if you don't have, the $200 to put down on fill in the blank, whatever it is, a weekend escape, or the $1,000 to get and all these things are wonderful too, the retreats and all these things, but they're not accessible to us. There's several practices. The first one is to make it a priority to nourish yourself during the day. And so even if that means putting one extra healthy thing on your plate a day that you can do, whatever that may be, literally an extra serving of berries. I know this might seem so banal and almost too simple, but it's actually really emboldening. One extra piece of nourishment or just hydrating yourself a little bit more. Just that one extra step to taking better care of yourself actually begets more movement toward taking better care of yourself. Another thing is to move every day if you can. And I want to make this really accessible. It does not mean you have to do some major workout thing. It has nothing to do with body weight or anything like that. It is literally just to get things flowing. If you're able to walk, walk for 5 minutes, even if it's literally around your apartment complex or around your block, or if you're at the office, everybody can't do 5 minutes. And then you'll find that you'll want to do more. I love the practicing of just getting your thoughts out because back to why this book was so hard to write. Writing is hard too. There's this romanticized idea that we sit at our desks. I've thought this, and I always think of Diane Keaton in a Nancy Meyers movie, and she's sitting at her desk, and everything is great and it's all flowing. Hell no. This book for me was voice notes to myself. Sometimes when I was in the shower and I would hop out of the shower and leave myself a long voice note. This was voice notes to myself when I'm at a traffic stop, and I don't recommend people do that, but I did that, right? This was notes too. This was editing and writing, really crazy rough drafts in the morning because I still worked full time while I was writing this book too. But the process of that is accessible to anyone as well, and we call it journaling, and I think sometimes that can be a little bit of a turnoff for somebody who doesn't maybe want to sit down and physically write, but
Yeah.
journaling means just getting your thoughts out too. But you get to know yourself a little bit more by doing that. So I invite anybody who's listening to, when you're thinking of anything, send yourself a voice note. No one else is going to hear it but you. Jot down something on a notepad. No one else is going to read it but you. Um, Call yourself and leave yourself a voicemail, anything. But just that whole act too is a start to all this process. That beautiful question that you ask. And lastly, there's something about going outside and looking up at the sky. I can't say it enough. I get emotional talking about this because it is a reminder that we can be so in it, in our stress, in our self doubt, in our lack of self worth, in our questioning. And we need that reminder sometimes to go outside and to know there is something bigger at play. This beautiful universal energy, it's connecting all of us. And then whenever I do that too, it makes me actually feel less alone because I know there's another woman out there feeling what I'm feeling.
I just adore
Yeah.
you. I
Thanks for
also
letting me go, letting me go, down that rabbit hole because it's a good one, right? Again, a lot of this stuff is how can I feel better or more at peace too, right now? That's what I want for people to know. So, yes, I love that question.
I walk most mornings and I talk into notes and then I throw it up into AI and I have like a little chat channel that is just like my stream of consciousness.
That's
And
so good.
but like the stuff that comes up on walks,
Yeah.
without a doubt the best stuff. I like half wrote my book
Yeah.
walking and talking. It's where your brain actually calms down. It's
It
incredible.
really is. And it's empowering too because sometimes you feel like nothing maybe connects. Think, okay, how am I going to write this book, right? Or how am I going to do this whole proposal? And then you actually, when you start chipping away at it too, you start to see these themes and you start to see how things do connect. And if it comes to a book or whatnot, but I love picturing you do that, doing that.
Always the lady talking to myself and her. So my experience is that you write turning 40 as a sense of self-discovery rather than a decline. And I still remember like putting the decorations up for my mom's 40th birthday at New Shanghai Chinese restaurant in Evergreen, Colorado, and all the like over the hill, like all the messages
Yeah.
around like, well, you had a good run, you're done from here. So as we imagine this as a sense of self discovery, what do women or humans need to let go of and grieve in order to discover this new way of being or the new expanded version of themselves?
I call the 40s an intersection because it is a time where so many things collide for a woman. Um, and with that, with one of those things that is coming into this intersection is this awareness that we've been talking about, right? There's also with that awareness, there is that number that in one respect, I sort of chafe at the term midlife and middle age because I think it's quite privileged sometimes because we never know when we're at that midpoint. And,
Right.
I know you and I have known people who have passed way too young and technically middle age for them was, I don't even want to say, I think of my father who passed in his 50s. So middle age for him was in his 20s. And with that said, considering the average lifespan for a woman in the Western world is around 80, right? There is no denying that we are at this quote unquote middle point. And so that is so incredibly clarifying. And it also forces us to let go of ever taking advantage of time or taking for granted, I should say, time. And we all do it because we're busy and we think, all the things. And again, somebody who has gone through a major health crisis or has experienced loss, that's so many of us too. Maybe we're not taking this time for granted, but still it really whips whips you into the present to realize I don't want to take any of this for granted, but also I really want to start doubling down on the stuff that matters. And I think that's the other really cool thing about this time. And hey, this book is focused on the 40s, but that was actually a really, and there's some things that are extremely specific to the 40s, how our bodies are changing for women. I talk a lot about perimenopause. I talk about obviously like the stigmas around this age. But there's also so many things that I hope speaks to a woman in her 20s and 30s and also speaks to a woman who's on the other side of her 40s, in her 50s and 60s. It's really about being a woman, right? But there is something about that awareness that helped me realize, and I know a lot of women I talk to, I don't want to mess around anymore with how I'm spending my days and my weeks, and ultimately that adds up to years. I want to take better care of myself, however that means. I want to really, really start looking at how does my self-worth show up in my world of work, right? In what I'm doing in work and my creativity and if you can infuse more creativity in your work life or outside of your work life, but still really honoring that. What are my relationships? How are they feeling in my life too? And so it's just this big time doubling down on I'm not messing around anymore. And again, I wasn't really messing around before, but this is serious. So I think that's been a really fun and it's kind of scary too, but you know, we got to look at it.
Yeah. That question of worthiness at work, my
Yeah,
experience and a lot of people I've talked to, they they outsource their sense of worthiness to accomplishment. However successful you are in your career, you're a high achiever. Look at all of my awards and accolades and titles and all the things that I do that I prove my worthiness to others. And they reach pinnacles of whatever their career looks like, and they still feel that sense of emptiness, or they're not
emptiness.
fulfilled, or like they're looking around like, is there
Yeah,
something that I'm missing? And it's so often it comes down to a sense of self-worth.
yeah.
So for you, how has that process looked for you? And I don't want to just put my experience on you, but like the relationship between worth and achievement and success. How has that looked for you?
Yeah, and I'm reevaluating it every day for myself too. I'm being really serious about that because that arrival fallacy, when you think when I just get this title, when I just make this salary, right, then fill in the blank, all these things will fall into place. And we know, and science shows that too, that is kind of puts us in the cycle of purgatory. But again, it's no one's fault. Like we all, if not most of us, have experienced that. And we're starting to have this collective conversation of, wait a second, no, it's you know what I mean? You gotta do the inner work and you gotta really look at these things. The A big change for me, and this has come with writing the book and looking at my career, because I have been kind of a traditionally focused, ambitious, quote unquote, ambitious woman too. I've been a journalist. I've always wanted to be a journalist. I've hustled. I've done all the things. Two really big changes that mindset changes around this is one, I'm realizing I work to live too. I work to make money. I am so grateful that I love my work, but still at the end of the day, this is not like I'm doing this to put food on my table. I'm doing this to be able to pay my bills to live. And I think sometimes we can forget that. And so when I realize that first and foremost, I think, okay, I'm actually really going to be smart about where I'm putting my energy within my work world because I am not afraid of hard work like you, Megan. Like I will work to the end. I will put an extra day on the calendar. I work so hard. But am I working efficiently to really take care of myself? And I'm realizing that I have been kind of spinning my wheels a lot in a way that a lot of my work has taken more than it's given me. So we put in this energy and this time because then we want to get something in return, which is payment, right? But when we really look at it, we're often women particularly are putting in so much more. And so with that said, I have put on some really strong boundaries in ways that I'm able to right now. I realize this isn't accessible for everyone, but for me, I am putting boundaries on emails. I'm putting boundaries on even when I look at social media related to work too, because I'm actually really putting a marker on my kind of again, those parameters around my work. So then on the outside of those parameters, I can actually give more to some of my, the things that it really fill me up creatively right now. Other side projects too that I'm really looking to. I'm really looking to diversify my career. And I hope women can start thinking about that too, like diversifying too because we can put all of our eggs into this one thing because that's what's feeding us. And we miss out on things sometimes too. And again, that can look a million different ways for a woman. But really looking at that again, the brass tacks, I'm doing this. And I'm one of the lucky ones that I enjoy it, but I'm doing this to feed myself. So is this, working for me still? And what are some things, that I can do to take better care of myself in my job? That's been a big one for me, and I think it's an important conversation to have.
It's reminding me, I wrote about this concept of essentializing of in order to show up with your cup more than empty or
Mhm.
to show up as your best quality of self. There's a sense, especially as you get older, you get more comfortable doing it of essentializing what you spend your time on,
Yeah.
with the relationships you have in your life, the inputs that you allow in, social media, whatever it is. And the practice of doing that, the more we dial that in, the better we're able to show up.
Mm.
And a lot of the things that I used to say yes to were because of I felt some obligation. I was worried about judgment, or I was worried about disappointing people, or I was worried about making someone uncomfortable. So I'm curious, the stories specifically about womanhood and how
Mhm.
women should be, which ones of them have you found become kind of less believable and you turn the volume down on them as you get older, and which ones become louder?
Mm, cool. Oh my gosh. Ah, I love this. I'm feeling all the feels right now. And they're catching up to ideas in my head. So this is really good.
Good.
It is you said something a minute ago, and I wish I could quote you exactly, but you don't want to make somebody uncomfortable or inconvenience someone,
Yeah.
right? That's a huge thing. So that has become quieter, in a sense, louder, and it's more obvious, but now it's quieter too. That, yeah, this idea of kind of outsourcing our self-worth we're talking about and outsourcing just all the things, so many things that I have done in my life, and again, I know this is the case for so many other women too, have been because I don't wanna inconvenience somebody. So, I've wanted to really if somebody asks me, "Do you have kids? Do you want kids?" All the questions, which is a fine question. It can sting, and it's stung because I feel like it always warrants this very neat response. "Nope, don't have kids. Nope, don't want them," when it's a constellation of things, and I don't feel that way when another woman asks me, but, in certain situations. But I've been just really quick in answering it because I don't want to make somebody uncomfortable. I don't wanna really provide them, any sort of inconvenient answer. I'm leaning into it now. I'm totally letting it rip. So that's the biggest thing for all these things. I don't want to worry about my beliefs and my values and how that's gonna inconvenience somebody else and make somebody else uncomfortable. And women tend to do that, and we need to stop doing that. This is same thing in work too. We need to speak up when something doesn't align with our values. We need to honor our integrity. We don't need to justify all these things, especially when we're working so hard. But so much of it is in the service of others and in negative ways, in ways that arrest us. And so I find that that is getting again, the louder, quieter, I think that is I'm letting that go. It's getting quieter, I've been seeing that so much. A beautiful part that an energy that I've experienced too, I talk about the having and not having children a lot because it's something I'm really passionate about is this world we live in right now, this time in our lives, it calls for that divine feminine energy that lives in all of us. It lives in men too. It's not gendered, but it's very robust in women. And I'm seeing that that is becoming louder for me, and I love it, that we can channel that and use that in so many different ways in our life too. So, obviously, we put that toward if we are women with children, we put that toward our children, but we also put that toward our friendships. We put that toward our creative endeavors. We put that toward our relationships, right? Whether it's intimate partnerships and I just said friendships. And I think we can put that toward ourselves more too. Talk about the care, really, really, really turning that mothering energy, which is ultimately such juicy compassion, toward ourselves. And another thing that's getting really louder when it comes to the shoulds is I'm feeling proud. Like I'm feeling proud of what I've done. I'm feeling proud of the messiness of the mistakes I've made because it means at least that I was doing things and I was going after it. And I want to really tap into that pride for myself even more. And I want other women to feel that too. And when I talk about this in the context of work too, when I said earlier, the idea of a career, I think sometimes can be a little limiting in a way because we feel like we need to build this perfect career. When what about that woman who is juggling several jobs and maybe they aren't vocations that society, um, you know, they're not venerated by the society, valorized, I should say, by society. gosh, I don't want her to feel bad because she's not building some perfect career. I want her to look at her body of work and to go, I am working hard. I am putting some good energy out there. Collectively, I'm proud of myself. And that's how I'm feeling too in work. Some of the things don't always make sense. And I don't know what I'm building next. I'm feeling this fire to build new things. And like I said, to kind of diversify my skills and all the things. But I'm looking at this body of work and I'm proud. I am just as proud of my time being a cocktail waitress and bartending as I am being a journalist on in front of the camera, behind the camera, for digital, all of it. Every single thing I'm proud of. And that's it's like we can start as women really tapping into being proud. And you said something too that really landed with me. You've said a million things that have landed me with me, but we were talking about women in work. We were talking about your book, and you gave this great visual of, we're doing all these incredible things, but it's like we're dragging this backpack, I think of, we're carrying such a heavier load and we're still killing it, right? So if we can take the time to actually really look at, holy moly, I'm proud, and look at our capabilities because society's not reminding us of that. No, they're
Yeah.
just again saying, up, not doing enough, and up, you're looking older, and up. It's like, hell no. Look at what I'm doing. I'm proud. That can be such a reframe. It can be just so exciting. Maybe we should have a party about telling each
Right?
other what we're proud of.
All right. That's our next gathering. The linear progression of the career. That's another narrative that we're so many of us are told. And my career has not been linear. It has been extraordinarily messy. And my experience of that is that each thing, whether or not it felt like a success or a failure, gave me a tool or a skill or an experience or or a connection to like put in my little skill toolbox so that later in the journey, sometimes it was like immediate, sometimes it would be 10 years later. I'd be like, oh, now I understood why I did that thing that seemed like an abject failure. And I've started imagining my career as a collection of experiences, a collection of intellectual curiosity. And it's been a really helpful way for me to not feel like to impose some belief about where I should be now. All getting to how have the insights from your book or your process or this entire thing impacted how you think about success in your career? Oh, and I'll also add,
Yeah.
and ambition.
Ambition's a good word. I'm holding on to that one for the next few seconds because I was saying a couple minutes ago too, I'm not messing around. I'm really doubling down on this. The reality of time does show us this, and it can be that big birthday with the zero behind it that can kind of reawaken. Oh my gosh, I can't mess around. My ambition is so much more holistic now. So it used to be so focused on, again, checking all those boxes, specifically when it comes to work, building my title. I'm a journalist, making sure, okay, an editor, making sure I'm a senior editor, making sure I'm executive editor, all these things. I'm much more holistically ambitious with what are the experiences? What are the things I can learn? How is this feeling? How am I taking care of myself too? Again, when it comes to money, because I can't say it enough, this is something that I have faced, and I am still actively facing. But again, I spend my time and energy to take care of myself. And so we want us to be talking about money more because it helps me too. I haven't figured it all out, but it helps when I talk about money with you, it helps me and vice versa. Of like, oh my gosh, are we, speaking up? So, but the ambition is so great. I'm just so much more holistically ambitious about my life. And so, where does career fit into my life and where does work fit into my life? And what is that satisfying? What role is that playing? And is that in balance with all these other things? Even though balance is kind of a fallacy, but is it totally out of whack or is it, adding to my health and is it adding to my creativity and is it helping my relationships? Like all these things fit in with one another. Yeah, I think it's changed, totally reframed the way I've looked at work. And I like this idea too. I talk about taking risks, and I specifically talk about this in the relationship chapter, but this also goes for the work chapter. This can kind of touch on anything. And I think about the idea of making myself proud, right? But I also, writing this book has helped me or evolved my thinking around taking risks. What is a risk I can do for myself? Ideally, every day. But if that's not even realistic, once a week, and it can be small. But what is something I can do that gets me closer to myself, gets me closer to my joy, gets me closer to taking better care of myself, gets me closer to who I really am? And that's a big theme in our 40s when we realize I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. I do want to be in this relationship. I don't like men. I like women. I don't like this kind of work. I like that kind of work. We do have this again, this declaration of self. But what is a small risk that I can take that other women can take for themselves? That gets them a little bit closer to that fire inside. In the world of work, I mentioned this already, but a risk was I'm going to be stricter on emails. So then I can take, and it doesn't mean I'm going to stop working or I'm like getting lazy. No, but I'm just going to be stricter on certain things, going to be stricter on, um, the other outputs of my energy. So then I can reallocate that toward things that really matter for me. A risk for another woman could be opening up a bank account that you start putting $5, even $5 a month towards something that you really want to do. It can mean calling an old friend you haven't talked to in a while because you want to reignite that. It can be anything, but what's a risk we can do for ourselves? And that's really helped me. And again, in the world of work, it's really, really, I'm taking big risks of just reaching out to people cold because I want to make new connections and friends and I want to expand, what's possible.
So when I turned 40, one of the most insidious stories that I had was around kind of physical appearance and sexuality. There's
Yeah.
this externalized narrative that we're all given around what we are allowed to show up as, especially when it comes to physical appearance. And I remember when I turned 40, like after like the first few weeks, feeling this sense of like, no one will ever look at me again. I am not
Mhm.
allowed to dress certain ways. I need to be more modest. I just have this whole narrative. So I'm curious around insights that came up around that topic.
Yeah.
And if you're seeing a trend in the way that people are starting to reimagine their 40s, 50s, 60s, and what it means to sexuality.
Oh gosh, yeah, because it really is a conversation about feeling this vitality in our bodies. And when I wrote the beauty chapter, which I don't want to play favorites with them, but I think I had some of the deepest insights actually around that because beauty and how, I mean, our appearance is our currency, unfortunately, in many ways. I wish it weren't the case. And you could argue that's for any person too, how you kind of present yourself. And in a lot of ways, there's a lovely aspect to it because we want to take care of ourselves. We want to be proud of this body. We want to be proud of our faces, right? But then the tipping point is, again, these manufactured societal ideals is it needs to look a certain way and it needs to stay a certain way. And
Mhm.
these beauty ideals are so damaging. And because of them, beauty come moves from a place of where every single person is worthy of it to something that we have to perform. And then to add to that, too, which is so tiring and so extractive and so ableist and racist and abusive, too, when you're considering these beauty ideals when it comes to women and the history of them, too. It's wild, like the deep history of beauty ideals. And then we only have a short amount of time to be able to perform. We don't even want to have to feel like we have to perform. And then when we hit the marker of 40, it's like, oh, you're over the hill. It's too late. And again, this calendarized idea, this total made up fallacy, but it is so damaging. And I remember I was at a wedding and I had just turned 40 and I was having a great time. And it was one of those times where you're just surrounded by incredible people and you're feeling sexy and you're feeling vibrant, you're feeling all the things. And then some random dude, and I still don't know who this guy was. He was a friend of a friend. And I talk about this comment in my book, actually. And he just comes over and he goes, dude, he was talking to somebody else. It was a circle of us. And he goes, do you see all those 40-year-old women over there dancing? And I literally remember feeling so vibrant, 2.5 seconds. I had to remind myself to take a breath. I was so upset. And in doing, and that's going to be, unfortunately, that's all around us. He is just symptomatic of so many things that is wrong with this, the beauty culture and all of that. A beautiful, and I already touched on this, but a beautiful awakening I had around this, though, is the realization that beauty and eroticism and sexuality, all these feelings, they're all a feeling. It's not something to perform. It's not something to buy. It's not something to justify. And it is by no means something to earn. Every woman is worthy of this and has this inside of them. So just knowing that first and foremost, and I don't care if you are 21 or if you are 61 or 81, it forever. And so this is part of the really being compassionate, taking care of ourselves, right? Is because we want to keep that feeling. We want to stoke that feeling. And sometimes we can be robbed of it. we can get that aliveness back. And in doing that, I have completely done this audit of the practices, the rituals, the products, the things I spend my time and money on, the narratives around beauty. And I've really, really paid attention to, okay, what genuinely makes me feel alive? What genuinely makes me feel sexy? And I'm not talking about looks because that's totally subjective. I can feel like I look great and somebody else might go, oh my God, no, that doesn't matter. What makes me feel in my core sexy and vibrant and alive? And I'm leaning toward those things, and I'm letting go of the other things too. Again, it's that control, that putting that patriarchal those deep patriarchal stories of putting a woman in the position of being a mother, and she's always meant to, procreate and be a mother, and then after that, she's done. That's a story, and it's a story that's really impacted us for a long time, and it's impacted our mothers and grandmothers, and I think we're starting to really unlearn that story. It's still gonna take some time, but again, that sexuality and vibrance and stuff, that's alive in us all the time. And we can dress how we want to dress. We can, all these things. But I just invite women, because I've done this for myself, or consider the things that make you feel alive and beautiful and sexy and keep going toward those situations. If it's a dance class, if it's being around a certain person, if it's being in the company of a certain novel or a book, if it's using certain products that really do make your skin feel vibrant, and whatever it is, but go toward that and start to let go of the other things.
Many people have probably had this insight, but right as we're beginning to stop outsourcing our self-worth and
Mhm.
begin feeling our confidence, and we stop normalizing, prioritizing other people's comfort over our own and putting up with everyone's garbage, it's like right at this moment where that happens, the societal narrative has men or whatever it is, like reversing it and being like, oh, you're 40 now. Like, look at the 40-year-old woman. It's this immediately like, oh, you need to turn that down
Yeah.
because that's not allowed. Like,
Yeah.
I'm imagining you dancing at this wedding as a wild, joyful sense of rebellion. That is a societal expression of you like
Yeah.
reimagining what it looks like to be a woman at any age.
And dance by yourself too. If you don't want to dance around people, I get it. Dance by yourself or move your body by yourself. Put on something that makes you feel good. And again, this is similar to the voice note, right? Or jotting down a note to yourself. No one's going to see you. You can find, if you get that 5 minutes to put on some song that just opens you up, that's how. That's how you get closer to yourself. And that's again, you remind yourself, I am so sexy. I am vital. I am worthy of this feeling. And it's the work of our lives, Megan, to remind ourselves of this every day, that there are larger systems at play created to suppress us totally. And it hurts all of us, but it really hurts women. And so we have to just, again, connect with ourselves and talk about it more to remind ourselves this is set up to keep us pushed down because they know that we just get stronger and sexier and more beautiful and more capable of doing incredible things with every year we get older. And so that's really scary for these systems at play. But I'm not worried about the systems at play. I want us to let her rip.
But this is why your book is so damn important. The book coming out May 5th. This everyone go get it. Last question pertaining to the book. What is one insight from the book that you are still like you wish we had talked about that you're just excited to share?
Oh, that we're always, always, always learning, always learning. And I'll share this nugget too. I don't, I, I don't talk a lot about the mythological in the book, but there is a thread weaved throughout the pages. And what I mean by this, and it's really interesting to me, is we have these three archetypes that are commonly that for a long time have been used to describe women, very loosely, sort of energies and traits that correlate to a woman's age. Again, very loosely, but it's basically maiden, mother, crone. And they can be gorgeous and amazing. And technically, we can be in our crone era, but also feel maiden energy, right? So it's all loose. I love them. I also think that they can be very limited because what happens when we look at our 40s, we're actually pushed into crone a little early. As gorgeous as crone is and incredible, but we're not crone yet in our 40s. We are this other archetype. And Steph Jagger, who's this incredible women's coach, introduced this to me. She said, we're the autumn queen. And Danae Logan, a therapist I interviewed for the book, she calls it our enchantress phase. But it's this understanding that the 40s are this electric time of new power. Again, a closeness to ourselves, capabilities, desires, fire, all of this. And we need to start giving it new vocabulary too, because this is it's a personal renaissance. And so I love that the idea of the autumn queen, and I think about her. And Steph Jagger actually said, she goes, the reason why there isn't archetypal storytelling around this is because this age is because it's our most powerful. It's when we start to really get powerful. So they don't want to give us a word, right? It being the systems and all that. Like, no. But I love that. I envision my autumn queen. She's just this embodied, powerful, magical, beautiful self. And I bring her with me all the time. I bring her with me to meetings. I bring her with me to doctor's appointments. She's here with me right now. She's next to me. And so I kind of channel, I pull from her energy when I'm still in the trenches of self-doubt and feeling unworthy. I'll be like, what's my autumn queen? How's she responding to this? It's
Oh, I
pretty
love
fun.
that. Autumn Queen. All right. Being 40 is the book. How else can people find you?
Oh, this has been such a joy. I don't want this to end, Megan.
Me either.
Can find me on Instagram at Stacey Lindsay. I'm here and there on social media. I have a Substack newsletter. I call it Andy, and or at staceylindsay.com.
The best. All right. You're the best. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Megan.
All right, friend, thank you so much for joining me on Unbehaved. If you are vibing with today's episode, I cannot tell you how much a good review means to me. You can find me on all the podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, etc. I love hearing from you. Honestly, I read all of the comments, so please reach out. You can also look me up at meganfrenchdunbar.com or on the social medias to stay in touch. I think I'm supposed to have some sort of cheesy catchphrase here to wrap this up. But in the spirit of unbehaving, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to subject you to that. And I'll just let this epic stock music play me out instead. Bye-bye.